He is a giant in journalism, a sports media maven. He has done it all in the space of local television, Fox Sports, and beyond. He is a friend of the show. Bill Dallman joining me today on the Onto Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is a sports media podcast where we actively seek out the human interest sides of those who work in the industry. Because as much as those who work in the industry feel like their life revolves around work, believe it or not, there is more to life than that. That side of Bill Dallman is about to come out right now. Before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Here's my chat with Bill. Bill, so excited to have you on. You're known as a media guru and a consultant, and you've worked so much in sports as well. Having a few moments of your time is quite the treat. Looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, me as well. I love sharing the journey and what all goes into it, and anything that anybody could get out of it, I think is a bonus.
What can people get out of how good of a golfer you are?
They can get out of 11 fairways, 14 greens, and about 33 putts, and that's not good.
What was good was it last year you had a hole in one?
I did.
How did you pull that off? And when you have a hole in one, those are memories that you're remembering everything to the millisecond of how that played out.
That is such a great way to put it, Bryan. And I'll try to be succinct, because one thing I've learned from my wife of 31 years, no one cares about your golf game at all. The other thing I've learned about sports in all the years, no one cares about your fantasy football team. Don't talk about it. It's not interesting. I don't want to hear if, somebody had not done something, I would have won. Like, it doesn't matter. But yes, my hole in one. So I think I've already talked about my poor putting. I was on the 10th hole and I 3-putted for a 7 on a par 5 that I should have easily, at least par. And I was super just sort of ticked at myself. And the hole was 170 yards uphill, a little bit into the wind. I stuck the tee in the ground. I grabbed my 6-iron. I hit it as hard as I could. And it literally flew straight into the hole, dented the whole front of the cup, and didn't come out.
Was there a state of disbelief as soon as that happened, or what was your reaction time into realizing what happened actually did happen?
We all saw it go in the hole. And the other thing about it is I was playing with my best friend who got one the day before on a different hole at the same course.
Wow. So
which led to speculation that perhaps there was something, not real about this hole in one between these two guys, both of which, by the way, were witnessed by people. But there was some chatter in the, afterwards in the bar, like, yeah, right. So you guys play together all the time, and he got one Friday and you got one Saturday. Like, we're sure about this, right? And we kind of laughed it off. And then they said, oh, and you say you hit 6-iron, it was 170 uphill into the wind, like, really? And my answer to them was, I did not wait 58 years to get a hole in one to lie about it now.
That is a great point. And I'm still waiting for that first hole in one. So hopefully it will come in this lifetime. If not, I will live vicariously through you. You mentioned the numbers. So it was really interesting just because as a golfer, you're recording your putts and everything, and you have a great memory. I feel like that has to be important in the industry of media, to be good with memory and recall. How vast is your memory, and how do you feel like that's been a valuable asset and a weapon to the road you've had in media?
Well, that's a really astute observation, Bryan. And I'll take it a step further to say there are a lot of stats girls and guys. There are a lot of stats people in sports that they know everything, they know every number, they know all that, right? And that's something that's valuable. But what I would say is more valuable to me in my career has been remembering a person's name and their face and not giving yourself the excuse that, oh, I'm not good with names. Oh, I can't. I know I meet too many people. I talk to so many people. I can't possibly remember their names. It's a choice. And if you choose to associate, Brian, black shirt, little thing in the collar, yeah, it's F, okay. Like you choose to do these things, you can remember people's names, and that is a memorable trait. People recognize it and appreciate it when you know who they are and you know what their name is. And you're not saying, oh, didn't we meet one time? So that's a bit of advice I would give. And then thing number two is yes, to be able to have the recall of, I mean, I'll just put it in terms of a sports show. You know what? The last time that we spent 10 minutes talking about NBA, our numbers went down, and the time we talked about NASCAR it went up. And you have this in your institutional memory and your recall, so that it's not that you still want to fact check and make sure that what you're saying is correct, but you have a general idea of sort of, oh, I remember this situation and what we did and what we could have done better. Or, maybe I had a podcast that was going off the rails and the person, I wish I would have done X. And then you just have it in that brain of yours that this was an experience that I can make better the next time.
With that said, and you're talking about things that you're thinking about that happened in the past or looking forward as far as planning and numbers and what the viewer likes, why is it so hard for those who work in media and in sports media to live in the present?
Great question. I think there's a longing to compare in the sports world. You're always trying to compare eras. You're trying to compare, uh, ballparks. I mean, as a baseball reference, of course, they always go through the years about Mantle and Bonds and Ohani now. In hockey, Wayne and Gordie Howe. So I do think there's a natural, just I don't know, it's a bond in sports, right? Like your mom talks about watching somebody growing up, and then you talk about who you have in your realm, and then your younger brother has somebody else. So I think there's a lot of comparisons. And what else about living in the moment? Other than that, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, we're focused so much on shared experiences and, like you said, comparing, and it's a connection. Ultimately, we're desiring those connections, and being able to think outside of what's happening
Yeah.
right now allows us to do that and relate to people. And when you think about your road in media and the work that you've done, obviously with Fox Sports One in Minneapolis and all the other different places that you've been from a local TV perspective and beyond, what are you best at doing?
Hmm. Some people would say not much, but yeah, I mean, honestly, I think extemporaneous speaking, learning, thinking, and I'm also really good at listening. I make it a point to use two ears and one mouth and to truly comprehend what people are telling me, so that I'm not pontificating. I'm not, spending my time saying, oh, look at me, look at me. I'm spending my time hearing. And I've found, for example, in a job interview, the more you get the person to talk about herself or himself, the better you are doing. The better chance you have of getting that job, if that manager is telling how great they are, you are doing a fantastic job of engaging that person, letting them talk about their successes, and utilizing the tools that you have to bring out the best in them. I think that is a skill that I developed um, partially through learned experience in my family and with friends, but also, reading and processing, how to be a leader, how to be respected, how to be someone that is counted upon in an organization. And you don't have to have the answers. You have to find ways to get people together to get to an answer. And I have to remind myself of that a lot because um, I think we all try to jump to, hey, I got it, especially in sports. I got it. But you don't have to do that. And in fact, learning that it's a better outcome if everybody comes to it together, that's a trick, and that's a skill that will serve you well.
How does that collaborative process serve you well at home as a dad, as a family man, and the ways in which that pays off?
Yeah, I think I've been married 31 years, and got two great kids that are often in the world. And it was a lot of my wife works for NBC News. She's a accomplished journalist, a Peabody Award winner, DuPont winner. She's amazing, right? Um, I think it comes down to, Brian. I mean, wouldn't you agree? It's about respect, in that you're respecting the people that you're with and around, and and you really truly respect them enough and love them enough that you want to listen and you want to hear. You don't you don't have to be right. You don't have to tell them. They don't have to be doing it your way. If you listen and you respect and you understand, maybe not always agree, but the fact that you went that far, I think helps in all facets of life.
You listen so well to others. When do you find it's most important to listen to yourself?
I don't do a very good job of that. Um, I grew up in that mentality of rub dirt on it, you'd be fine. I'm a hockey player, I can take anything. And not to my, much to my detriment, right? There have been many times where, um, I should have thought more. I should have taken better care of whatever I needed to take care of. But you're in that mentality of like, hey, you know, if a problem can't be solved, I'll just outwork it, and I think there's a new generation now that understands, emotive behavior much better than my generation did. And I'm glad to see that there's, like I always felt I had a work-life balance, but it was because I coached my kids. I spent all my time with them when I was away from work. Um, but it's probably to the detriment of other family members, of long-term relationships with friends. Like it was sort of like my work and my family, right? And those were the two things, and there wasn't a hell of a lot of time for other things. And then the last thing I'll say is that I have always been physically active, physically fit, and I can't even tell you how important that is, just to I think your mental health, to feeling good physically. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to do CrossFit for 2.5 hours. I don't think. I mean, you're in good shape. I don't know what your workout is. What is it?
I do a little Peloton.
Okay.
I've done some jogging, some walking. What I need to do is the upper body. That's where it needs work. And so, What are you bench pressing these days?
I don't bench press anything. I will say that when I played hockey, uh, when I played hockey, I weighed 155 pounds and I bench pressed 275 twice. But I have really short arms.
How
No,
physically?
you know what I mean? But what I learned, and I wish I would have learned this a long time ago. I wish I would have learned this 25 years ago, that lifting heavy weights basically does nothing except get you hurt. Um, because unless you are an elite athlete that needs that, there's no reason to do it. And since I've changed now my yoga, I do a lot more like yoga. I do a lot more sort of core exercises, that type of thing. I feel just as strong as when I was benching 275, but I'm not hurt all the time.
That's the big difference. And hot yoga is something I failed to mention as well. I'm not sure if you've gone down that road. It's a beast, unquestionably. You mentioned hockey and how physical of a player you were. How many times were you checked across the boards?
Oh, yeah, I mean, my nose was at the level of most people's shoulders or elbows. So that got roughed up a few times. I think, uh, you know, I never made it beyond just, I didn't play in college. I went to University of Wisconsin. They won the national championship my freshman year, so there wasn't any, there wasn't any, you know, illusion that that was going beyond that. But I'll just say, physicality is a little different in hockey in that you're on skates and there's the ability to, if you're agile, to not really suffer a lot of huge collisions. But certainly I took my fair share. I don't know that I ever want to fight. I would
I
I
was
would
going to ask
just
you your
I would
winning
pretty much get
percentage.
in a clinch and say, like, really beating me up is like gonna do you nothing. People are gonna think you're silly fighting me.
Did you ever get teeth knocked out?
Yeah,
How does the process
with
work
the mouth guard, by the way.
with the mouth guard? That how rare does that happen?
Sure, but it's not great.
And then the process of getting the teeth back, and I mean, obviously that's a normal thing with hockey players. What is that like?
These are fake.
Wow, nobody would know.
Yeah, they did a nice job.
I guarantee you, Bill, that if you were throwing 100 different things that we were going to talk about and you were to guess, that we would be talking about your teeth would
My
probably
veneers were not on the list of
they were
things I
not. I wonder
researched for
why.
this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but as far as your eye on the industry as a whole and your perspective and what you see and the ingenuity in the space and how you're able to be sort of like that, see things happening before they happen. Where do you see yourself in that realm of your ability to be one who can look ahead and notice trends and get ahead of trends in the way you show yourself in being out in front?
Well, to turn it back to you a little bit, I'm gonna make some observations, and then I'd love to hear what you think if
Sure.
you agree with this. But you know, sort of the heyday, I think, of sports media. Well, eh, when when I got into sports media, it was about highlights and scores and trades and storylines, and everybody knew every manager, and these things were what sports was about. Then we sort of watched it morph into this: who can say the most buzzworthy thing, who can argue the biggest point, what's this person's legacy and not their legacy, and that was a trend that actually got me away from the sports realm, because, as I said to someone, I just producing a talk show is not what I got into this for. I'm in it for the journalism, I'm in it for the information. But now I feel like there's been yet another, and I find it positive, change toward this multi-platform, toward podcasting, toward real discussions, toward information. It's not just sitting around arguing with graphics and trying to say the most obnoxious thing. It's having a real honest discussion, or and maybe buzzworthy things come out of those. I mean, Aaron Rodgers says something every time, right? But I feel like it's a positive trend again, that it's about information and conversation. What are your thoughts? Because you see it a lot more often than I do now.
I couldn't agree more with you in the sense that you're having more real conversations and there's not the middle person anymore as far as like athletes are now putting themselves out there in their own podcast channels and they're speaking from their own experiences, not through a third party or a media person. And so you're getting some really interesting, real conversations. And so, as you said, yeah, they might say some intriguing things, but I think in the past, more so in the past than now, and although some people do this now, you throw things out there to see if they stick. You might, the problem with some of that stuff is the shock jock stuff. A lot of people don't believe what they say, but they realize from a branding perspective and from where they want to take themselves as a notoriety on a notoriety stage that they have to do that. Now I feel like being yourself is cool again. Where
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Where you don't have to feel like you have to say something that you don't mean just so it gets retweeted 1,000 times and people are generating social media traffic based upon what you said, which you probably are like, well, I just said it because nobody else said it, just to be a contrarian. Now you don't have to be a contrarian, and I think that you can build a name for yourself.
Yeah, well said. I mean, it's almost like we're reverting back toward the content and the real thoughtful storylines that sort of got lost in that brief period of, you know, the antipathy shows is what I would call them.
You were in LA and you've been in LA, you've worked in LA for a while. Of all the major markets, and you've worked in so many different markets, what makes LA different than any other one that you've worked in?
Great question. Multifaceted. First of all, living in LA was fabulous. Like there was always something happening. There was always some conversation. We were always running into amazing people. You see J Lo at the drugstore. I mean, these things happen. I mean, it's in sweatpants, by the way. Um, I'm golfing with Dr. Phil and his son. I mean, at Riviera. I mean, how does this happen? So it's an amazing place and amazing things happen, and you run into people that's just like, wow, I can't even believe this is true. Especially when you're from the Midwest, like I am. It's kind of cool. Um, One thing I think that people should be prepared for in LA is, in other parts of the country, the people that are in your organization, maybe at your station, they're your friends, they're your team, they're the people that are there for you, they're supporting you. Um, there's a portion of LA, especially in sports, where the the girl, the guy next to you is not looking out for your best interest. In fact, they would like nothing better than to watch you fail.
Correct.
And that sort of a mentality, I didn't understand. I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for people who like would actively work against you or talk about you like that were on your own team. And I'm not specifically referring to anyone or anything. It's sort of an in general LA situation that, it's such a um, competitive environment that it, there are times when that person that works right next to you maybe not has your best interest at heart.
It's so true. It's this me culture. Whatever I need to, and I'm not saying me personally, but just in general, whatever I
Right.
have to do to get to where I want to get to, and the ways in which I go there, like you said, if you're not from this area, you're like, wow,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
probably
and at
just as much.
FS1, we had this shared experience though, because we started FS1 from nothing. So we all came from different backgrounds, right? And so we had this group where we truly did care about each other. And we all started about the same time, and we all had thrown in our lot. And that's why it was so magical. And that's why it was such an amazing experience, and why so many of us have stayed in touch over the years. Um, but other instances in Los Angeles, I have not found the same esprit de corps, put it that way.
Yeah, and it's the entertainment business as a whole too, in music, in sports, in media. It happens all over the place. It's something that I prescribe to is be careful. I even think to myself this, Bill, is be careful. Like as you're building, be careful who you share your work with. And I'm not saying you personally, I'm saying for me,
No,
because you want to know that that person, when they look at your work, that they have your best interests.
yeah.
And you're
There
not
are
sure if they do.
many ideas that I've had that have been appropriated that I'm just like, really? You're taking credit for that? Are you
Yeah.
kidding me? And that would never happen. Well, I shouldn't say that. I haven't seen it happen in other places, but in LA, like you should be ready to have your best work appropriated, or you don't even like they don't even mention you.
And how much of the thick skin do you need in LA too? That you notice that's important as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think uh, I might have that already, so that was okay. But I think what I wish, if I could go back and redo anything, it would be I would have been even a more supportive teammate. I would have been, um, I guess more empathetic in terms of um, it's not just about like who outworks who or how much we can all get done or there, there's there's a human side to this that I think gets overlooked, especially in sports, and the toll that it takes on people. And even if it's not taking a toll on you, or if everything's going fine for you, to just be a little more empathetic and say, like, okay, what is that other person feeling, and how could I help, and you know, or how could I be more understanding of what they're going through when I'm not. I guess if I had the lens to go back, I would try to be better that way.
How do you check in with yourself? And how hard is that? And when do you notice that happening in your life whenever it does?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I was better at it. I wish I had more tools to do that. I think hopefully a company provides training. Hopefully you can invest in yourself and read or listen to podcasts, those things. But I think there's sometimes in my life there's been just well, I'm too busy for that, or I don't need that, or somebody else will benefit from that. Instead of thinking about myself, I could have done a better job.
You've done such a great job, though. In part of this industry, which I feel like is symptomatic of just about everybody, is everybody's hard on themselves. They
Yeah,
are.
true.
It really is, and you're pointing that out. Obviously, for myself, a lot of people who we work with and have worked with and aspire to be, they've all been very hard on themselves. As we wrap up this conversation, Bill, your interests now and your future, where do you, what catches your attention now as you look ahead? We've talked about how hard it is to be in the present, even though that's probably something we should do more. And now I'm kind of being hypocritical because I'm asking you about the future. But what excites you about your future?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I love seeing younger people succeed. I love being a mentor to the extent I can. I love conversations like this where I can share maybe one or two things someone will take away. Um, and I love just being a part um, of of the energy of media. I think journalism is still alive and well, telling truths, righting wrongs, fighting for the powerless, being voice to the voiceless. Those things get me out of bed in the morning. Um, and there's a place for it. It may not be the traditional uh, broadcast media that I remember, but it's morphing into ways, as we're talking about on different platforms, that are truly exciting, that can still be monetized, that can still be viable. And I think the last thing I'll say is I think what's exciting is that people are starting to take control of their own destiny, like you are, for example, because the corporatizing uh, of media and broadcast and the corporatizing of everything. Now you mix that with AI and modeling, and there's a very narrow window now of what is expected of people. And what I think is great is when people go outside that narrow window of a safe space corporate media and go off on their own. I find that I find that exciting, and I find that perhaps that'll be something that I can take a swing at.
More than that, you're going to get the bat in your hands and you're going to hit a grand slam, bottom of the ninth, game 7 of the World Series. You've done that, metaphorically speaking, over the course of your career. And I think we did that as far as the conversation here today. Bill, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate this.
Well, Bryan, I was thrilled, and I'm congrats on everything you're doing, and best of luck.